I was a ray of light, exalted high above the earth. I could see in every direction simultaneously. And every time I took a breath, this beautiful horizon would just rise up like the fins of a giant stingray swimming under the sea, just in slow motion. As I would take another breath, it would just keep rising and falling, and it was so beautiful. I knew that this was the truth of who I was.
You're being very casual about, I instantly started having transcendental experiences. How long did you stay there?
When I came back down into the room, my life was changed forever.
Dr. Sue Morter is a renowned international speaker, author, master of bioenergetic medicine.
Whatever is stored in subconscious memory is going to be utilized as a checklist to see how safe am I today. If I'm a constant worrier over time, my subconscious thinks I have good reason to worry. The mind is designed to serve something greater than itself. That thing that is greater than itself is the real you. It's the real you, the one that existed before we experienced the story of our lives.
How do we get in touch with the soul?
We're not only connected to God, we're made of it, which is to awaken to a greater version of who we are versus one who is stuck in fight or flight. What if I didn't have to earn my way into heaven, but what if I was made of it?
Hi, I'm Mayim Bialik.
And I'm Jonathan Cohen.
And welcome to our breakdown. Today is all about energy.
How our thoughts vibrate at a specific frequency. And as we wake up to the true nature of ourselves, we can begin to have a spiritual awakening, find our soul's purpose, and transform our lives.
If you've ever wondered what people are talking about when they talk about energy, or you have blocked energy, or I can see the energy around you, we're going to speak to someone who's going to explain all of it. Dr. Sue Morter is a renowned international speaker, author, master of bioenergetic medicine. Her book, The Energy Codes, is a 7-step system to awaken your spirit, heal your body, and live your best life. But her work is based around the notion that there's different energy in our body that we can channel and direct in certain places. And she teaches an entire system of ways to access these different levels of energy, which she believes relate to consciousness and a connection with the larger universe.
She also explains that the stories we tell, our past experiences, the pain that we're holding, which once kept us safe, is actually limiting us. It's preventing our bodies from healing. It's preventing us from finding novel solutions to our problems, from being creative, from thinking outside of the box, and from really being present in our own lives. She describes how our bodies are speaking to us, giving us signals that we're failing to listen to.
Dr. Sue is going to also take us through, I'd say, one of the best spiritual awakening moments I have heard. The way that she describes what happened to her in a deep meditative trance, it's an unbelievable story, and it led her on the course of her life. Her next book coming out March 2026. We're so excited to speak to Dr. Sue Morter. Welcome to The Breakdown.
Break it down.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here.
What do you think people should know about the work that you do in terms of the impact it can have on their lives?
One of the things that happens for people in life is that we get caught up in thinking that we are our thoughts and our personalities and our story and our history. And with the work that I do and teaching people how to get underneath the story of their lives and work with the raw energy of flow or no flow, what happens is they begin to become empowered, and they don't get distracted or dispersed by thoughts and patterns and beliefs that have been stored based on past experience or a fear-based reality that most people are living in. And so, because everything is energy, what we're doing is learning to work with the energy of our lives instead of the opinions and attitudes and dispositions and premature conclusions that we've drawn. So what happens is a reduction of stress because we begin to recognize different energies as they flow through our body. Instead of calling them anxiety, we understand that it's actually something wanting to ignite and emerge from within. And what happens is people begin to use their mind in a creative manner instead of a protective manner. And that reduces the stress load and increases the energy that is really maintained for creating a better life for ourselves, innovating and really generating the life experience that we'd like to have, rather than just getting better at protecting ourselves from something that someone else is creating.
Maybe we can start with you sort of taking us through this energy, right? Because many people know that they have feelings or they have thoughts, and sometimes they can feel it in their body. But can you give us a little primer into what is this energy? How should we be thinking about it? And in particular, you have this fantastic diagram. These levels of energy that come out from us. Describe how we should be framing that in terms of us being energetic bodies.
Mhm. So the energy, the quality of the energy that we're working with is the energy of creation. Truly, it's the energy that is the backdrop for all of life. And that might be a big thing for us to try to wrap our minds around, but this might help. A physical law is that all physical matter is compressed energy. So in order to get a physical body, energy has compressed and compressed and compressed and compressed and compressed, and it generates this physical form that we are living in. But at the end of the day, it's still energy. And so various levels and layers of our being vibrate at different frequencies. As one might imagine, our thoughts vibrate at a different frequency than our bones, right? We can change our thoughts pretty rapidly. It's energy that is very malleable. And when we get more and more dense into the compressions of our physical existence, it becomes, more dense and less and more stable, I should say. And so it's really the energy of creative force, the life force itself, source energy that we're working with. And our thoughts and emotions and our chemistries and our felt sensations in our body are all various. Think of it as different radio stations, different vibrational frequency versions of the one true whole self that we are. And so when someone is having feelings, emotions, and they're feeling these ripples or these jolts in the body that we would call anxiousness or nervousness, anxiety, fear, what has happened is we've learned that those energies are what we've named them to be, as if they are bad. The moment that we name it, now there's a story that goes along with that. So if we name it fear, then the mind starts looking immediately for, okay, what am I afraid of? What's wrong with me? What's going on? And it just starts to escalate the mind's activity away from alpha thinking, alpha frequency, which is our true state, into higher and higher beta, even gamma, in terms of paranoia and filling in the blanks and writing stories all the time. And so what we're doing is recognizing how to pull people back down out of their head by using their body and their breath to recognize, oh, this is just energy. I don't have to write a story about it. I could just feel it. And if I would feel it, it would start to serve the purpose that it is. And so what happens is we begin to recognize that the energies that we were turning into fear or paranoia or anxiousness actually become passion and the energies of movement and purpose and tenacity, and when they're properly routed. So it's really a matter of integration and understanding a little bit more about what it means when we're feeling these things. So all the while, it's so helpful if we recognize that the system is designed for innovation and creativity and success, and we are completely, constantly supported in the expression and in the experience of those things. And if we're disconnected, we turn it into something entirely different, and we get derailed and start writing stories and then reacting to the stories as if they're true. And the next thing we know, we're creating a reality that is based on a premature conclusion that we drew, that we were unsafe, just because we were feeling this shuddering. I often use the example of, just before a little baby chicken egg hatches, a baby chick, it starts to vibrate. And as it vibrates, what then happens next is a little beak pokes right through the shell, and it's birthing himself into another world. And the same thing is true inside of our deep core at the solar plexus level, where our whole mental activity is actually anchored on an energetic level. It starts to shake when actually this part of our personal identity and our personal power is trying to birth into a new situation, a new version of ourselves, a new realm of expression. But we start to feel that and we shut it down and we try to move away from whatever's making me feel this. And so we're actually coming right up into a threshold of moving into a new reality. And then just as we're putting our hand on the doorknob and opening it and we feel the turbulence of that transformation, we shut the whole thing down and try to escape, get away from it. Or we become addicted to taking things that cause us to not feel it, all because we have a story written about this feeling that isn't true at all. It's just the story that we've collectively decided to adhere to. And so humanity is in a constant state of anxiousness or fear-based actions, all because of a misinterpretation of the energies that are trying to move through their system, moving them into, carrying them into higher and higher states of consciousness, states of awareness, states of ability. And so we just recycle in a place of not knowing and not having and wanting and being afraid that we're never going to get it.
Well, people have a very low threshold for feeling anything that's uncomfortable or uncertain.
They do. They have no experience with leaning into it. They have all only, mostly experience of avoidance. And so we develop avoidance behaviors.
Or solving it. There are so many tools at our disposal now in modern day society that we can say whatever we're feeling that is uncomfortable at all, I can adjust my state, I can adjust the people around me, I can distract myself, I can shift something so that I don't have to feel like that. Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Storyblocks.
Storyblocks is a stock media subscription service offering unlimited access to a ton of incredible assets that you may have seen us use here on Mayim Bialik's Breakdown during our cold opens. From high-quality stock videos and images to music, sound effects, and more. They help creators and businesses enhance their projects without extra costs and more peace of mind. Unlike traditional stock platforms, Storyblocks provides an unlimited model with easy-to-use tools to streamline your creative workflow. It's been so easy and very intuitive for our awesome team of editors to pull unlimited downloads of diverse and high-quality media from Storyblocks for one predictable subscription cost. Storyblocks has everything you need in one place: 4K and HD video, templates, music, sound effects, images, and more. You can choose a monthly or an annual plan, no hidden or extra fees. An unlimited source of content gives you the freedom to test, experiment, and create more effective video. Storyblocks' authentic stock library is 100% human-made, built on real experiences and creativity with no generative AI content. That means content created by real humans, no robots, people. That's something that's getting harder and harder to come by these days. Tell more powerful, authentic stories with unique footage from real artists from around the world. Storyblocks allows any creator to streamline their workflow, saving members an average of 3.5 hours a week. I could use that time. They feature thousands of pre-made customizable video templates for editing programs like After Effects, Premiere Pro, Apple Motion, and DaVinci Resolve. Easily add motion graphics like title animations, overlays, and logo reveals. You can even access the entire Storyblocks stock library right in Premiere Pro and After Effects with the Storyblocks plugin for Adobe Creative Cloud. To get started with unlimited stock media downloads at one set price, go to
Storyblocks.com/breakers or click the link in the description. Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Shortform.
We recommend a ton of books to you, our awesome listeners here on Mayim Bialik's Breakdown. Probably way more than you have time to read, if we're being honest. Sometimes it feels like more than we can read. Short form is the best way to learn ideas from all those books that you've always wanted to read. They're like book summaries on steroids. They don't just recap, they analyze them in a very detailed way, so you're getting the book's key points at a very deep level. Most summary apps are brief, like 10-minute AI-generated overviews that only cover what's on the surface of the book. Shortform's team of writers and editors expertly craft in-depth coverage of all the most popular nonfiction titles. They also have interactive exercises to help you apply the ideas that you just learned so that you are less likely to forget what you just read. They add some smart insights, like connecting what one author thinks about another author. This helps us understand concepts at a deep level by building these connections between ideas. We use short form to help us go back and revisit books that we've discussed on the podcast that we're not done tackling. And if we have a guest coming up and it relates to something in another book, we know that short form is the easy, convenient way to get a comprehensive refresh. They have a wide variety of book genres to choose from in PDF and audio format, from health and well-being to productivity and communication. Short form publishes new book guides and articles every week. They even have guides just for podcasts. And subscribers get to vote on what books they cover, which is really cool. They're constantly adding new features to cover every idea across every medium out there. Their browser extension Shortform AI summarizes everything across the internet, from articles to YouTube videos with a click of a button. There's even a discussion community where readers can ask each other questions about the book. We love this feature. Actually reminds us of how we discuss episodes with our Substack community. Head to shortform.com/DMB for a free 3-month trial when you sign up for an annual subscription using our link. That's shortform.com/DMB.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Helix Sleep.
Like so many of us, I'm busy preparing my space to spend more time indoors as the colder season hits. Sleep's also even more important during this season. It's peak cold and flu time. Now's the perfect time to invest in more sleep and a new mattress. We are very excited to hear that Helix still is partnering with us after so many years. I had so many sleep issues. My limbs kept falling asleep when I was trying to roll over. I've had my Helix for about 4 years now. I feel like almost 5. We've been sleeping better, no more arms and legs falling asleep. We highly recommend taking the Helix Sleep Quiz. That's what we did. You can find your perfect mattress in literally under 2 minutes. Everybody sleeps differently, and we are confident that you will find a Helix mattress model designed specifically for your specific sleep positions and feel preferences. I know you're wondering, I'm a side sleeper and I like firm because if it's too soft, again, the limbs could fall asleep. I'm a midnight. Jonathan is a
Twilight.
He's a twilight guy. Their models with memory foam layers provide optimal pressure relief and cradle our bodies in the areas that we need it most. Also, the cooling features of the Helix mattress means that Jonathan is not overheating at night and then telling everyone about it in the morning.
I don't like to overheat.
Go to helixsleep.com/breakdown for 27% off site-wide, exclusive for listeners of Mayim Bialik's Breakdown. That's helixsleep.com/breakdown for 27% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name in the post-purchase survey so they know we sent you.
helixsleep.com/breakdown. When we talk about narrative, everyone is inherently a meaning-making machine. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to map patterns all the time. So to remove yourself from a story is probably one of the most challenging aspects of the human existence. We're making up stories all the time to keep us safe. We're making sure that we don't touch that thing that used to hurt us. And then we build these maps of our world that may not be as updated as they potentially could be to help us move forward in our lives. And so, I think a lot of people get confused because they're like, my intuition is telling me, or my feelings are telling me something is unsafe. How do I know if that's real, or how do I know if it's holding me back from expanding into a better phase of life, into the next phase, into breaking through that eggshell, into the next way that the world may unfold for me?
Yes. So we're obsessed with creating coping skills, coping mechanisms, and working with a way to find safety. And I often share with people that safety isn't a good enough goal for you, because if you understood the universe and its workings and its structure and what's actually happening here that even brings you into this body, into this life existence, you would recognize that there is only one thing happening here, and it is that true source energy unfolding, and it isn't here to harm you. It is here to allow you to flourish. And so we've created a realm, a world of duality. We perceive it dualistically. And so inside of any dualistic reality, we have, good stuff and not so good stuff. And so we want to stay away from the not so good stuff and only, move into the good stuff. And all the while we're secretly hoping for unity, but we're constantly, reinventing duality every time that we opt for safety. And so I strongly feel, and have certainly witnessed, people over the last 40 years and working with this, that once we decide, once we choose that the universe is on my side, that what's unfolding here is in my highest good, if I just stay grounded and allow it to be in service to the unfoldment of the life that I am meant to be living. What happens is people are so used to living in their heads that they depend on their stories or their beliefs or their perspectives to, as you say, to rely upon for a synchronized life or a grounded life or something that keeps me in touch with, am I going to be able to survive, or am I in danger, etc. We rely on the story, which is invented by the mental body, which is not in the physical body per se. We know that consciousness is actually outside of our physical form, and it is anchored in various areas, in various ways, inside of our physical form. But the point is, the ultimate, I feel, for us to do is to no longer be dependent on those beliefs for a sense of self and a sense of okayness and a sense therefore of opportunity and creativity and innovation and generating a life that I truly do want. And so rather than holding on to our stories, what I'm teaching people to do is let go of the story and allow myself to be anchored to the body instead of anchored to the story. Because the story is a little more dense than just being present and available and creative. And so we tell ourselves something over and over, and it begins to create some density in the field around the physical body, and it gives a false sense of stability, this story. And holding on to it is what we do to be able to maintain an existence here and to be functional and to get up and do our things and have any kind of vital force at all behind the decisions that we make and the life that we're trying to live. And so the idea of letting go of my story would send someone into, way too much expansion, and no one feels comfortable doing that until they realize there's something else I could be anchored to, that I wouldn't have to hold on to my stories and my beliefs if I was anchored to something else that was equally or by far even greater, amount of stability. And so that's what I'm showing people how to do, is if you anchor your consciousness in the core of your body and you start to really allow these little packets of energy called photons that are what consciousness is as it's solidifying into physical matter, we gather those photons at a deeper level of our being. Instead of them just gathering to the field, they're gathering to an anchor spot, an anchor point, if you will, at the deep central channel, the core channel of our body. And once we start to realize how energy flows and how it originates and how it expresses here in the physical dimension, we come upon what is called a toric field shape that has a central channel down the middle of it, which is something that ancient cultures referred to as the Sushumna in ancient India and in ancient Egypt, even prior to that, this river of life. And so what we're doing is starting to get in touch with this true state that is solid and is present and is timeless and has always been and will always be. And the more we attune to that radio station, the more we start to allow it to be enlivened. And the more enlivened it is, the less activity the thinking, analyzing mind has to engage in order to generate this sense of well-being, or what we would have called safety. And so as we drop in to this space, we begin to be able to sustain a state of well-being long enough that we can actually change the frequency that we're attuned to, that we have an affinity to, as far as the various radio stations that are available to us to dial into. It starts to make more sense to trust. It starts to make more sense to be beginning to think about, who would I be if I wasn't afraid? Who would I be if I was safe and that safety was never going away? Then what would I do with my mind? Then what would I be thinking about and dreaming up and taking action toward? Because once we start to orient into that version of ourselves, we start to heal on every level, because we're not jumping into fight or flight and dysregulating the nervous system and constantly changing the chemistries of our body that make us then relate to the story of, see, I knew I wasn't safe. I knew it was going to go this way, and proving and reproving constantly our greatest fears.
Just how prevalent is it in people's lives that they're just caught in the cycle of, I knew this was going to go wrong, therefore, and here it is, look, I've proven it to myself, these self-fulfilling prophecies and this dysregulation of their bodies. People, more so than ever, are spending an enormous amount of time online. We're consuming an enormous amount of digital content. We're riding the wave of what each of those videos show us, as well as interacting with so many different people in our lives, miscommunication on text, however it may be. And we just assume that the physical sensations we're having and the experience that we're having in our physical body is just normal, right? But you're presenting another way of being that for some it may feel like almost unachievable, because they're like, oh, I have to remove myself from society in order to not carry the waves of those inputs that are affecting me. So I'm hoping you can just frame how normal it is to basically have our systems taxed in a way that we're not realizing.
So the subconscious's job is to protect us. And so whatever is stored in subconscious memory is going to be utilized sort of as a checklist to see how safe am I today. So if I have information stored at the subconscious level in my system based on past experience or based on our greatest fears that we've feared for long enough, that information starts to get stored in the subconscious, because information gets stored in the subconscious either by an event of intensity or a small event over a long enough period of time. So if I'm a constant worrier over time, my subconscious thinks I have good reason to worry, because that's my new norm. That's what I've established over, years, since I was 5 and then 15 and then 25 and 35, et cetera. Over a long period of time, it's now established in the subconscious, and the subconscious memory is, vibrating, if you will, at this particular frequency. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, it's way down here at a 3, because I'm constantly compressing my life because of all the things that I should be afraid of. The other person who might have had some intense experience, maybe they were abused, maybe they were abandoned, maybe they were, a combination of those things. They have had an intense experience that also went into subconscious storage. And at that subconscious, we're driven through our lives by our subconscious, trying to become conscious. That's what we're doing here. And so if I'm driven by my subconscious, and my subconscious memory is chock full of all sorts of, it's not fair, it's not safe, they're never going to listen to you, you're not good enough, why should you try again, you're just going to get hurt, all of that, the subconscious is actually always in an attempt to keep you safe. And so in survival mode, until we start to rearrange it enough that we are not in that low vibrational frequency, we're starting to up level our memories, the quality of our memories, based upon something that I teach people how to do, which is building the circuitry for innovation and renovation, if you will. And so it isn't a matter of withdrawing from society so that I can be safe long enough that I can start to heal. It's a matter of translating what's happening in society from a different perspective. It is a matter of moving into it, knowing that there's some benefit in here. There's something that I was misperceiving before. And if I will learn to build more circuitry to be able to perceive from a higher bird's eye view perspective, I could see a bigger context of what's going on here. And I could actually then remain a stable influence moving into society, instead of yet another person that's moving into society and getting caught up in the story and getting emotionally reactive to it, instead of utilizing it to our advantage, which is an opportunity, an invitation to awaken to a greater version of who we are, versus one who is stuck in fight or flight and truly reacting to the outer world, instead of being a creative influence in the outer world to truly bring more stability to the whole bandwidth of human consciousness.
Something we do here a lot is translate between different disciplines. And I think a term that would be helpful to translate in this scenario is the term frequency. We've heard from clinical psychologists that when we're in a state where we believe nothing is going to work out, where we catastrophize, where we have a lot of black and white thinking. It changes the neurochemistry of the brain to see less opportunity. We go back to defaulting towards extremes, towards negative bias, towards catastrophic thinking. Personally, I am a phenomenal world-class worrier. I can find all the reasons why this thing is going to lead to that thing, which is going to lead to a catastrophe, and I can follow that down the trail. And Mayim has pointed out for me many times that that way of thinking may not be accurate, and it would feel so accurate to me. I have all the reasons why I'm justified in thinking that from my history and the way I analyze a situation. I'll go get data to prove that it's possible. What specifically changed for me was when I would say, I don't need to stop that part of my brain. I just need to step back enough and touch on the idea that there could be an alternative that I may not be seeing yet. And if I believe that the universe is on my side, which I think is a big leap for a lot of people, this idea of that there is a force that wants the best for us. Call it the universe, call it a higher consciousness, call it God, call it nature in some way. And that things are not just chaos and I'm not destined to only suffer. If we can step into a different framework, even if it's just to pause long enough to say there's something else that's maybe available for us, we have seen that many clinical psychologists say that it changes our brain enough to be creative. So when I hear you say frequency and lower frequency, I can associate it with these thinking patterns, catastrophic thinking, black and white thinking, absolute thinking, that life will only be a certain way that I can imagine and may default to the worst. And by increasing frequency, what we're doing is, how someone else may describe it, is that we're increasing possibility. We're opening up enough that there could be something else for me that I haven't yet imagined, and that feels lighter, more open. Is that how you imagine it?
Yes. So if you're thinking worst case scenario and, calculating all the possible risks and, doing all that and stepping into that world, your brain is starting to operate, which we can measure, in reaction to your consciousness, which is being directed into worst case scenarios. The brain wave that will reflect back to us is very rapidly moving. And when you direct your attention to possibility, or when you direct your attention to the heart, or when you direct your attention to the body physically, what starts to happen is that rapid fire brainwave starts to come into an alpha frequency where there is more space between the peak and the valley of the wave. And in that spaciousness, we allow for presence to come into the moment. And in that spaciousness moment of presence, what will reveal to us is a different conclusion to the same situation. We will be available for possibility. We'll be available for love. We'll be available for a creatorship or a stewardship of something better than just defending from worst case scenario. So what people get into is they try to solve the issue of the mind with the mind. And the mind is actually designed to be serving something greater than itself. It is not a self unto itself. It's not whole unto itself. It's a part of a whole. And so when we identify as the mind, which the majority of the people that we're going to cross paths with today are identified in the mind. They think that they are their thoughts. They think that what they think is true, and they act as if it is. And so one of the things we have to do is teach people not to believe all their thoughts and to get that off of them so they can start to have some spaciousness here to make some better decisions than what their repetitious analytical conclusion drawing self is going to, pull us into as a means of survival.
We all know how much I love my cats. I would do anything for them, and I often do a lot of things for them that other people can't believe.
A quick message from today's sponsor from the ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program.
Your pet's part of the family, and you also would do anything for them, right? But those vet bills, whew, Those can add up quicker than you'd imagine. That's why it's worth checking out ASPCA Pet Health Insurance. Pet insurance can help manage the vet bills so you can focus on what really matters, cuddling and being cute. Also, here's a little bonus. There's a perk for enrolling. When you enroll in an ASPCA Pet Health Insurance plan, you could get a $25 Amazon gift card. It's a little treat for you while you're doing something great for your pet. The program offers customizable accident and illness plans, making it easier to get your pet the care that they may need. It's been around for almost 20 years. They've covered nearly 1 million pets in that time. You can tailor your plan to fit your budget, your lifestyle, and your pet's particular quirks, because big vet bills never show up when it's convenient, do they? To explore coverage, visit aspcapetinsurance.com/break. That's aspcapetinsurance.com/break. Eligibility restrictions apply. Visit aspcapetinsurance.com/Amazon terms for more info.
Mayim Bialik's breakdown is supported by BetterHelp.
Are you feeling the stress of the holidays yet? I know I am. The good news is that therapy can give you the space to create new, meaningful traditions, providing clarity amid all this holiday chaos. The holidays are a time of traditions, and some people have many in their families, some people have none, or maybe they're just beginning their own. Now's the time to reflect on what traditions mean to you, or rewrite traditions, make them your own, like perfecting a new hot chocolate recipe with the kids, or continuing your great aunt's sweet potato pie. Incorporating therapy into your new or existing traditions can help ensure you take time for yourself during what can be a very joyful but very hectic and, for some, lonely time of year. My favorite holiday tradition is not skipping therapy. No joke. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm going to skip it. That's exactly the time to double down.
You're actually very impressive, where you'll just block out a period of time and say, okay, everyone, I am not available. I'll see you after.
That's right. Y'all can have dessert. I'm going to go have therapy. It's very important to take care of ourselves during the holidays, and BetterHelp Online Therapy is a great way to close out the year with clarity and not chaos. Their therapists work according to a strict code of conduct. They're fully licensed in the U.S. A short questionnaire helps identify your needs and preferences, and their 12-plus years of experience and industry-leading match fulfillment rate means they typically get it right the first time. If you aren't happy with your match, switch to a different therapist at any time. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp's one of the world's largest online therapy platforms, having served over 5 million people globally.
This December, start a new tradition by taking care of you. Our listeners get 10% off at betterhelp.com/break. That's
BetterHelp.com/break.
So what we have to do, and you're onto this by saying, I just have to bolster a part of me that is not afraid, that is not worrying, that is not that. I don't have to like excise my mind and get rid of it. I have to just cultivate another version, another part of my mind, which is the observing witness mind, for example. And as such, that wave starts to open up, and there's more spaciousness in my life, in my moment. And in that spacious moment, I'm going to draw a different conclusion, or I'm going to take a different action. I might not even think about what I'm going to do, but I'll be allowing myself to take action toward what I really want to have happen. And people get to this point where they're like, I don't know, I just can't think about it anymore. I'm just going to do this thing. And in that moment, the universe, if it had an opinion, it would be saying, yay, finally, you're just taking action based on what's true for you, what you really desire. Even if it's potentially dangerous, or you don't know, or you're strategizing, you've asked 6 friends about it, all of that is just set by the wayside, and something else is taking over. And that something else is not the analytical mind. It is coming closer and closer to the core of you, which is where the mind is supposed to be reporting from the beginning, because the mind is designed to serve something greater than itself. That thing that is greater than itself is the real you. It's the real you. So that's like this soulful presence, or that which is to be observed, that authentic self, the true self, the one that existed before we experienced the story of our lives, and we drew these conclusions and then developed an opinion about who we are and how to navigate life to get the best outcomes. There was a version of us that was fresh and raw and ready, that existed whole and complete upon arrival, that is still sitting there. But we splatted when we landed, and we dispersed mind, body, breath in different directions, and we came up from that splat attached to the mind. And so we think this is who we are because it was the thing that was most capable of allowing us to make decisions, to get safe, to figure out how to please the big people so they take care of us and all of that. But that's not who we are. It's just how we've been operating. The truth of us resides when that mind and body and breath come back together, and our vibrational frequency, our energy vibration changes because we're gathered and whole. And in that, we're closer and closer to this alpha frequency, as an example, because nature operates that way. Our true nature is that. So what we meditate to bring ourselves below alpha frequency, because we're used to operating above it, and it feels so good just to like, get a little reprieve for those that can meditate. Some people are locked in, and the idea of meditation sounds great, but they just can't get it happening until they learn how, which they can learn how, to bring that spaciousness in between their thoughts, so that this presence, which is what built the body, it is what built the brain, it is what built the nervous system and every other component of our physicality. That version of us is what is here to have a life, and it never gets to have that life because it's been marginalized while we're busy out here, identifying as the mind and making it safe and figuring out, all that. When we are operating that way for a long enough time, we start to experience the ramifications of that. We start to stress out. Then we start to reach out. Then we start to recognize, oh, my mind is just making me crazy. And then what you're saying is the next step. People realize, oh, I don't have to beat the mind up for doing all these things. It's just doing what it thinks it's supposed to be doing. I have to get in touch with the rest of me that will put my mind in a different perspective and allow it to contribute to something bigger, because we're asking the mind to do something it was never meant to do. We're asking it to run our lives. It wasn't meant to do that. It was meant to serve the soul, who knows why it came and knows the purpose and knows what's real and what's not. But because they're operating as two distinct and separate entities, the mind is running like crazy, and it's freaking out because it's not equipped to do what we're asking it to do. But when we turn it back onto the body, and we begin to sense and feel and learn the language of the soulful presence, or this authentic self, the true self, the energy being, the quantum being, that it's all the expression of this divine source that you were referencing, God source, universal intelligence, all of the all. When those come back and start working together again, something different happens. Something tremendously different happens. We step into a different version of ourselves because we're not fear-based anymore. We're actually coming into life knowing that we've got this because we are more than we thought we were. But it requires a bit of an experience of that for people to even know that it's there as a goal to begin to work toward or work with and ultimately become this version of who we are.
Well, it seems like that's sort of the challenge then, to step out of the mind sort of running the show. And how do we get in touch with the soul?
Yeah. So one of the first ways that I have found for that to be effective is we have to get the mind down to its natural state, into alpha frequency, bringing the mind's attention onto the physical body. Physical matter is vibrating there in that realm. A tree outside isn't worrying about whether it should be a tree or not, whether it's a good tree or not, whether if it should have been a pine tree or should have had the beautiful colors that drop leaves. It's not doing that. It's just doing tree. And so it's vibrating at alpha frequency. It is what it is. And so when we move back on with bringing the mind onto the body more often and anchoring it there, and I teach people about anchor points along this central channel that I was referring to, because that life force really streams through the physical body in that way. It's been known for thousands of years, and that we don't know about it in our cultures is amazing to me. That we are so oblivious to the fact that the mind and the body and the breath serve more and are more equipped than the mind alone. Of course they would be. Together we're always more. That the intensity of the magnitude of that, I should say, is pretty straightforward. So by bringing the mind onto the body, we create that spaciousness in that alpha frequency, and it creates some elbow room. Think of it this way: the soul speaks to the body, and the body speaks to the mind, and the mind doesn't listen. The mind is off writing stories about how in danger we are and how horrible it is, and how listen what else is going on today in this world, and what are we going to do, and all of that. And so if we just get the mind to listen to what the body is saying about this soulful language that's trying to emerge, if we direct it back the other way, it's naturally there. So we start to feel, and everyone has felt this. Everyone has been in a conversation where something comes up and all of a sudden they've got a knot in their stomach. Or they walk into the grocery store and they see somebody that they've known, for a long time and had some encounter with years prior, and all of a sudden their chest tightens up or their throat clamps or an instant headache. And this language has been being spoken forever, but we just think, oh, of course, I got this upset stomach. I saw this person and there it is again. And we make nothing of it. We don't do the math, realizing that my body just revealed to me that I have something unresolved going on over here. My body just revealed to me that I'm afraid of this situation, because when I just got a glimpse of it, I had this language was started speaking. The soulful self was, like giving this input, if you will, in a way that's undeniable. We just have never inquired about, I wonder what that means. So like, where's that come from? What's really going on there? Beyond the neurochemistry that is, influencing there, beyond that, there is an energy blockage. There's an energetic interruption in the natural flow of your system that is happening for a reason. And it is mentally and emotionally driven. It's driven by the story. It's driven by how we're interpreting things, the meaning that we're giving it, even if it's on a subconscious level. So perhaps you had that encounter, 30 years ago, and you don't consciously think about it anymore. But if it was big enough, it had an impact, and it went into memory storage at that subconscious level. And that is what it is pumping out into the system all the time. Anytime you come close to something that's remotely near what you had as an experience. So how do we start to turn all that around? We start to use that very warning system to our advantage. We take it and we listen to it and we honor it and we do something with it. And so that's what I'm teaching people how to do. That instead of saying, why do you bother me? Why does that bug me so much? Why does that freak me out? Instead of asking why, I'm teaching people to ask where. Where in your body specifically are you getting impacted by this moment or this thought or this situation or these people? And it will show you every time why. It will show you by knowing where. It will show you what's up. Because if it's affecting you low in your gut, it means one thing. If it's affecting you in your solar plexus area, it means something else. If it's affecting you in your heart and your throat and the center of your brain, up your spine, shoulders, there's a language that's being spoken that basically is related to levels of consciousness that are stacked up based upon how they vibrate. Different levels of consciousness vibrate differently. They have different frequencies, if you will, that we can measure. So like your rootedness inside the body, your rootedness is a very solid alpha frequency. It's the root chakra. It's the root consciousness. It's that belongingness. Like, I know this is my gig and I'm here to create. And the next one up is, can I remember that while I'm engaging with other people and life circumstances, and that wisdom and that creative relational ability? Can I maintain my knowingness that I'm here whole and full and complete? And then the next one up is my personal identity. If I think I'm a 5 sensory survival-based human being, I'm going to have a limited life experience. But if I know myself to be an energy being, a quantum self that is here multidimensionally as a creator in my life, things start to vibrate differently. I start to translate and interpret and think and have different responses, and I become innovative and I become leader if I know who I am at that level of consciousness. And the next one up, I won't go through all of them.
No, please keep going through all of them. I think we're at the heart.
Okay, yes, the most important, right? So in the heart space, it's I know that I am love compressed into form. Because when the unified field begins to compress toward physical form, like we said, all physical matter is energy compressed, we go through a series of compressions to get here. But the very first compression that generates is a vibrational frequency that we call love. Love gets generated. So everything that's generated after that is actually based on love. I don't mean romantic love or I love you, do you love me, or something we use to negotiate with. It's not that at all. It is a reality. It's a realm. It's an aspect of life itself. It's the creative force. Think of it like it's the beauty that we experience when we look out at the light dancing on the surface of water, and the wind is, just making it trickle, or that breeze causing the rustle in the leaves, or just the idea of looking at the dew on the grass in the morning, or what you feel when you look into the eyes of an infant, or you connect eye to eye or heart to heart with an individual. There's something more than what can be logically explained. It's just precious and beautiful. And it's what we all crave because it's what we're made of, and we're not in touch with that. And so we crave it in the outer world, when actually, we're made of the darn thing. We just haven't learned how to use our mind to perceive it. And so that's the heart space. And then the throat space is this level of consciousness is, based upon what we've risen as right now in an integrated way. My throat area would be a level of consciousness that allows me to manifest what I know to be true. That I have thoughts about something and I'm oriented in a place of abundance. And as I have thoughts of it, people show up to help me manifest that thing. Or it happens just as I'm thinking of it. There it is. The phone rings and there's the person who's actually the solution, not the problem. And so on. And the next level of consciousness is, where the third eye is, and the pineal gland, and all the chemistries that are involved with opening that. Only through stability is that a good thing. And as we build the stability and that happens, we begin to see and sense and perceive our multidimensionality, which to some people might be like a shamanic experience, but to others it might be meditative experiences, to others it might be just ahas and revelations and so on. Lots to talk about in those departments, but that's a level of consciousness that we can attain if we integrate below it. And then the crown chakra is all about, our complete identity as source energy. We would initially call it as our connection to God or to the divine or the unified field or what have you, but ultimately, if we really know who we are, we're made of that stuff. So it's not about our connection to, it's about our remembrance of. Our makeup is that also. We're made of that God stuff, if you will. And then there are 5 other levels of consciousness that I teach regularly, which are chakras 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12.
I don't know about those chakras.
I know people don't know about them, and then we need to.
Do you know about them after the crown?
I don't know that I have names for them, but this is similar to what we did yesterday on Substack with our community, where we did a meditation where Mayim and I explored moving one's consciousness outside of their thinking brain and how to elevate it to see from a different perspective and connect to a different.
Well, what happens above the crown chakra? So
Chakra 8 is a couple of feet above the head, and it is the consciousness of an entire, identity of a plan for your life, a structure for your life. It's considered life purpose, and it is a revelatory state. So when we awaken at this level above the head, what happens is we have revelation. We have the idea of waking up to another version of life that is outside the thinking mind. So that's why we're so drawn to that in a meditative state, because it takes us up and out of this whole world that we're trapped inside of, is at this chakras 1 through 7 level, even though it's a beautiful world, when we even know about the existence of these levels of consciousness and chakra centers, etc. There's an entire new world available to us when we start to move into this. And so we see the blessing of life, if you will. We see that there's a reason that everything's happening, and we actually want it to happen so that we can wake ourselves up even higher. We're using life to awaken ourselves. And so that's chakra 8. And chakra 9 up above that is really a soul purpose, which is even higher states of aha or realization. And then there is a chakra 10, which is actually deep into the earth, underneath where we exist in our invisible anatomy. It's sort of the root chakra of our invisible anatomy, meaning the states of consciousness that exist beyond the physical realm. These levels of consciousness are vibrating at such a frequency they can't exist inside the physical dimension. They're a higher vibration than what can be housed inside the body. But they are measurable and here and present at holding the space for those chakras 1 through 7 to heal and to harmonize and to awaken. And that is a rooted, sort of holds the energy of your divine destiny, your true state. It's inevitable for you. It's like the earth version of your own highest self. And in that there is a deep knowing, a deep wisdom, and a love that is what I call a greater love, that is holding this. Think of Mother Nature and holding the space for all of life. Think of the molten lava. Okay, we'll do this. Think of the molten lava in the center of the earth. There's nothing you could throw into the lava of the center of the earth that wouldn't burn up into lava. It's embracing of everything. It's rejecting nothing. And so there's a version of us that is so present that it isn't rejecting things, because it's not a matter of sorting for safety. It's a matter of embracing what is. And if people begin to breathe with this energy center that is into the earth from where they sit, 2 feet or lower, it starts to take on this quality of this molten lava, greater love, if you will. Like I'm going to be present with everything, and I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to embrace it and become curious. Because if I'm not afraid, I'm going to be curious. So if I become curious, I'm going to be less afraid. And it's just our true nature. So this is a state of consciousness that allows us as a creator of our lives to become effective at being a creator of our lives. When I'm not afraid, think of it as super grounded. And when I'm super grounded, I'm going to be available. I'm available. I'm not sorting for safety and survival and competing or comparing or, all the things that we do if we're not grounded and solidly here. And then chakra 11 and 12 are, I like to kind of teach them in reverse order, because 12 is the presence of who you are. It's the God self or the higher self. A lot of people will say, my higher self told me, or my higher self guided me to do this, that, or the other. And so that chakra 12 is, energetically, I could describe it like this. If we had a big bed sheet and we just hung it up, so it's like hanging here. And if I came up behind that sheet and I grabbed a hold of it and kind of pinched it and pulled it toward each other, this is what science is showing us that we actually are. In the field of consciousness, we are just a pinching, a rippling, a folding over on itself of that unified field. So we're not only connected to God, we're made of it. We're just a compressed version in a holographic universe. That's what we are. So that's chakra 12. But when you do that pinching, the energy inside starts moving. And that movement is chakra 11, a cosmic principle of embodiment or incarnation is the movement of that energy all the way to physical form. So these higher states of consciousness, when we start to breathe with them and learn about where they're located and how we can feel them, our chakra 11 shows up in our hands and feet. That's why when people start meditating or get inspired about something, they'll feel heat in their hands, or their feet are tingling, or the hair stands up on your arm or the back of your neck. All of that is actually because we're stimulating these higher and higher and higher states of consciousness that we also are. So when you put all that together, we have this, I'm made of this presence, I'm made of the unified field, and I'm coming into form as love, and I'm landing deep in the earth as the center of my target. It's where I land, and then I rise up. And as I rise up to that chakra 9, I start moving this energy in a particular pattern. And I have an image of it. So here we have, this is this whole chakra 12. This is us, okay? And that chakra 8 is just above the head. Here's 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 that we're familiar with. And then there's 8 and 9. And then 10 is way down here. And then 11 is all the energy of consciousness inside here. And this 12 is that pinching in the sheet that I'm talking about. So there's our invisible anatomy.
When we spoke to Gabor Mate about sort of, what diseases we see, what ailments we see, what problems we tend to see in the body, which in many cases is an indication, right, of what's going on at some deeper level. And obviously Gabor Mate is speaking at a very different level than what we're talking about. But, the first thing I thought of is, there's this statistic that women who have been sexually abused often tend to have problems in the parts of the body that are the most intimate, right? And you'll often hear this, and this is not to say that every woman with endometriosis or, who has ovarian cancer, God forbid, that we can necessarily say this is what happened to it. But I wonder if you can talk about kind of the different levels of energy. Are they reflecting things that are happening with that level of integration? And people like Louise Hay, who have an encyclopedia of the entire body and, kind of devise meaning from, oh, if this is happening on your elbow, if this is happening on your left knee, is that the kind of, analysis we can start to do in a more clinical sense to say, gosh, what's blocked where?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. A resounding yes. So I was raised, my father was a pioneer in energy medicine. And so he was developing in the 70s ways to work with energy flow to get it synchronized in the whole body and harmonized in the body for this very reason that what you're speaking about. And about the time I opened my clinic, I went to school, became a doctor, opened my clinic, About that time is when Louise Hay came out with this book. My father had developed a system of recognizing that certain patterns in the body where energy had been shut down lead to different, can be traced back to certain emotional states that were not resolved. And they were suppressed into the tissues because that energy has to go somewhere. And if we don't express it or we don't metabolize it and really kind of burn it up, it becomes nothing. If neither of those happen, it gets suppressed. And when that energy is suppressed, what happens is there is a vibrational frequency association with a body part that goes with that, because the body is just continuing to compress and compress all the way into physical form. Every system of the body is based upon a certain vibratory frequency. So like we were saying earlier, the immune system, well, we were talking about bones versus emotions, but the immune system is operating at a certain frequency. The regulatory systems are vibrating at a certain frequency. The cardiovascular system, the nervous system, the skeletal system, et cetera, they're all different vibrations. So the organs and glands are vibrating at different frequencies. Body parts and where they're located on the body has to do with the chakra system and everything, that the levels of consciousness. So if those levels of consciousness are in turbulence, you bet there's an area of the body that is shutting down. So this can absolutely be correlated. So when Louise Hay came out with her book, I'm using my father's technique called bioenergetic synchronization, and we are using patterns in the body, working backwards and figuring out where these disturbances came from that shut this individual down. So we could see a pattern and then look up on a chart and it would say abandonment, or we'd look up on a chart and it would say frustration, or we'd look up, on this chart that he correlated. So I started reading in her book, and it was correlating so perfectly with what my father was developing. I checked it with every client, which I was seeing, 50 or 60 people a day at my busiest time in the clinic. But so I had a lot of time, a lot of subjects, if you will, in an experiment to correlate data. And as I was doing that, it was such a correlation. I realized that these practitioners, which were a collection of people that were gathering the information for Louise to publish in this book, were on to the same thing my father was on to, just, everyone in their individual ways working and landing upon these common grounds. And so the short answer to your comment, or further comment to your comment, is that there is definitely a correlation to when someone is not active in any one of these 12 levels of consciousness that we are speaking about right now. When they've shut down in those particular ways, there are definitely going to be physical ramifications in terms of allergies and asthma and digestive issues and hormonal issues and chemical imbalances and even personality issues and inability to heal itself. All of this is related to levels of consciousness. The body is a reflection of our consciousness. So if something's not happening in our lives, it's like healing, it's because it's not happening in our body. And if it's not happening in our body, it's because it's not happening in our consciousness, because everything is consciousness.
I'm also thinking about, autoimmune conditions and how many women in particular, are carrying the load of the body attacking itself, right? I'm sure you see this a lot in your practice. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about this very specific and significant moment in time when you experienced a spiritual awakening of sorts.
It's as if it's happening right now. It's so vivid in my consciousness. And I began having these experiences 25 years ago. And so what happened was I was very stressed and I was getting migraine headaches and I was looking for a solution, even though I could help other people in the clinic with, a patient would come and I could help them with their migraine headaches. But, I was really wrestling with my own, and to the point that I was missing work a day or two a week. It got that intense. And so I sought out meditation in order to try to deal with this pain pattern that was happening. And I instantly started having transcendental experiences in meditation.
Wait, hold on one sec. Hold on. You're being very casual about, I instantly started having transcendental experiences.
Yeah.
Were you doing TM? Like, what kind of meditation were you doing that led to spontaneous experiences with the universe?
I know. I was in a group of people there were maybe 300 people in the room, many of which were TM meditators, but I wasn't trained in meditation at all. And I went in the other, probably the other half of the people, or maybe a third of the people, were meditators of various sorts. But it was a gathering of a lot of people, and I was chanting actually. We were taking. I was never somebody to chant in public, to sing or anything. No way. And yet here I was. I was just okay. I'm going with this. I was just drawn to it. And so they're chanting something, and in this, I didn't know Sanskrit, and this was a Sanskrit chant. I didn't know how to hold the tone as long as they were holding it in this recording that we were, working with. And so I was having to really concentrate. And because I was trying to learn the words and hold it as long as you're supposed to hold the sound, let it come through your body, and to keep cadence with everyone else in the room. And I was really have to focus because I didn't understand the words or I didn't even know what they meant. And it was having to take long, slow, deep breaths in a repetitive fashion. And so it was this perfect recipe. Of course, that's what the chants were about. And I instantly was in another realm. And I felt this vibration that was very similar to anxiety. That's why I know what I know about anxiety, and that it's not the problem, it's actually a solution if we'll just go through it and train ourselves how to be in those moments. Felt that, and then boom, I'm in another realm. And I was exalted high above the earth. I could see the earth below me, about the size of a marble. And I was embedded into it up to what would have been my knees, but I didn't have knees. I was not in a physical body, but I was me. I was a ray of light, best way to describe it. But I was me. I felt like the me that I am right here talking with you. And I could see everywhere. I could see in every direction simultaneously. And I was in a light so brilliantly bright. It was 10 times brighter than the brightest day in the desert that I had ever experienced. But it wasn't a light like you wanted to, hide from it. It was like here, and I belonged in it. And there was this horizon that every time I took a breath, and I had free will, I could take a big breath or a little breath. But every time I took a breath, this beautiful horizon would just rise up like the wings of a giant, I guess the fins of a giant stingray floating, swimming under the sea, just in slow motion. As I would inhale, it would just rise up. And as I would exhale, it would just come back down onto itself, onto its resting point. And as I would take another breath, it would just keep rising and just falling just like this. And it was so beautiful. So it was brilliant light up above this horizon that was rising, and bright light below me. I could see behind and in front and below. I could see the earth and this eternal like spaciousness around me. But it was brilliant light. And I knew that this was the truth of who I was, who we are. And I knew that I had instantly knew, oh, this is who we are. This is what's really going on. And this project that I was in down in the earth beneath me was just something I was doing. It wasn't me at all. It was just like where my feet were walking. It was a project that I was in. And I knew that I had always been there, and that this was home, this was it. And that I could project my consciousness in various places, but I was doing this thing, this physical human thing at this time. And there was nothing broken. There was nothing missing. There was nothing wrong. There was nothing to achieve, nothing to become. It wasn't that at all. It wasn't about that at all.
How long did you stay there?
I don't know. I know that when I came back down into the room, the chant was coming to a close, and I opened my eyes, and the teacher who was leading it, I just opened my eyes, and I just kind of looked forward, and that teacher was just eyes locked on me, like knew what was happening. And boom, I knew in that moment that my life was changed forever. I had no idea of anything. I didn't even think beyond that. I just knew that, okay, there's something else here that, and now in the days and weeks to come, I had taken in, this is really high vibration. And it took me a long time to integrate that and to be able to be in the world. And so my life became a living laboratory about how to, number one, become comfortable with who I just, recognized myself to be, not on a mental and emotional level only, but on an energetic level. Like my body was changing rapidly. My migraine headaches went away, needless to say, but I also healed a scoliosis that I had been born with over the months to come. And what happened was it just began to change and rearrange how I was operating in the world, because that defensive, guarded, protective person that was creating the headaches was now not the only one running the show. And they were taking a back seat, and they were actually starting to dissipate in the presence of something new coming forth. And what was coming forth was that version of me, in this higher state that was now resonating with the me that was here on earth. And as that has continued to unfold over the past 2 decades, it has landed me with a lot of insights and perspectives and perceptions that I never would have thought I would ever know, because they aren't things I learned from books or my training as a doctor. They are far beyond that realm of knowledge. It's more of an inherent wisdom that exists as the backdrop of our lives here on earth, which I feel is why I'm able to talk about putting things in another perspective, because I'm very awake in and aware of this alternate or alternative version of life that is at the foundation of each of us. I have an image that is very interesting that maybe I can show. That it doesn't do it justice by any means, but it is just a way for us to kind of land in our mind's eye. If you would like to show that. Okay, so something like this was channeled in by someone in the 20s, and I had never seen this when I had the experience. I saw this soon after I had the experience, and tears just ran down my face, because I knew that someone else had been there where I had been. I knew I wasn't losing my mind, or I wasn't the only one, or what have you. So this is who we think we are. And this is an energetic system that I'm talking about that happens, this toric field I mentioned earlier. And this is not just a field, it's a living, moving field of energy. And that energy is coming from this into the earth, rising up and cycling around and around. And this energy field existed before we had a physical body. We were this energy field before we were a physical body. This is how we build the physical body inside this. In other words, this field can be measured in the developing embryo in the womb. And so I lit up right here. So this consciousness is spherical. That looks like a circle around them, but it's a realm, okay? And then I was this ray of light that hit the earth and, was doing this was doing this thing.
So this is an image that that other people who have had this experience also have had. Like the idea is that this is a universal kind of image that, or it's a universal experience that you had to be in touch with this level of consciousness, is the idea that other people are accessing it, obviously in different ways.
Yes, yes. And when I saw this image, but it didn't have this whole toric thing on it. It just had a person standing there. But this whole thing was there, and the violet light was there, and this whole ray thing was happening. Same. And so I created my version. Then I see that, and I see this, and it's like I get it. And I have seen representations of this. I also take people now to sacred sites around the world, and as one of the many things that I do, but once or twice a year I go to a different sacred site and take people there. And the further into some of these sites you get, you can see representations of this same thing that is being represented, that has held a very high space in consciousness.
What kind of places do you take? Like, where do you take people? Are we allowed to ask?
The one I'm thinking of right now is I do a Mary Magdalene tour in the south of France, and we go through many cathedrals and work with some of the statuary and the murals and even the decor of these beautiful cathedrals are all representative of what I know people had to go through to tap this Christed consciousness, or in the East, in India, the Buddhic consciousness. These symbols are there depicting these same levels of reality that we become aware of as we are embodying this higher state. So I went straight to that in that meditation, in that chanting moment. But in the years since then, I've been working on getting this down into the body, right? Embodying that instead of having, the bliss of moving into meditation and enjoying that realm. My life focus has been to pull the realms together and allow that to be here. So instead of heaven and earth, to have a heaven earth that we're living as, and to allow those two to become one. Because what has happened in my life as a byproduct of doing that has been completely changing my disposition, my identity, how I am in relationship, how I am in the world, how abundance flows into my life, and how I am now, similar to what we're talking about, not the worst case scenario queen, not always figuring out, strategizing and worrying, but rather spending my time and my efforts while I'm on this planet to share what I know to be true, and to allow people to calm down into that, because we have certainly been entrained not having access to this multidimensionality. So when I saw that other people had been there, it's so weird, because it was such an amazing experience, an exalted experience. One would think they would never need any kind of validation for anything ever again. But because I was running still on my old self and the circuitry and my patterns, it validated me in some way to see that someone else had been there. I was like, oh, okay, I'm okay. Whereas I was as okay as one can get when I lit up in this space, right? One would think that, I never need to question anything again, ever. And yet we have so many patterns that are so ingrained. It took me building the circuitry to be able to support this high frequency version of me in this physical body. It requires, I can show you a little close up on this. This is what happens for people. This is the way that whole toric field is supposed to operate. It's supposed to be this perfect expression of, possibility. And then I'll show you another image that we project this into a movie screen and walk into the movie. But here's what most people are doing. This divine energy is pouring down in, source is pouring down, hitting the earth, rising up. And as we have, been abandoned or been abused or drawn conclusions about love or about life or what have you, we shut down in certain ways. And now that rising energy has to circumvent around what's going on in us. And that wobble creates a distortion in the field. So now this individual is standing inside this field and it's distorted. So they see a distorted reality when they look out. They see a reality that proves that it's not safe and that I'm not okay and that it never goes in my favor and, and I can't trust. And it's all because of this. So this is where I have people working. Let's build the circuitry to move this to this. And that's what's happening with the people who are studying with this and working with it. And lots of them are having this transformational experience, because the more we move from this to this again, the more we start to resonate at a frequency where this can relate to this. They're a vibrational match. Prior to that, if we're operating like this, there's no way your highest potential is going to take root inside this system, because we're churning the energies in a compromised way, all because of our beliefs and our story and all the stuff that's stored in our subconscious memory.
I have a very practical question. I have two very close family members who struggle with horrible, horrible migraines. Given your experience with migraines, do you see any patterns with people who have that as an affliction?
Yes, migraines are, when we look at this, here's the pattern the energy flows in. It comes down, hits the earth, rises up and out the top of the head and around, and it comes in at the root. And so what was happening for me, which was what made me curious about the happenings for others, was that I was not rooted in myself. I was not rooted in me. I grew up with very brilliant parents, valedictorian and salutatorian of their class, graduated, married each other, had babies, and I was one of them. Okay, so my father was a brilliant scientist, inventor, and et cetera. And so one of the things that he learned very early on back in the 70s about bioenergetics, and it has proven to be true, is that the energy that's on the rise, when it gets blocked, it builds up underneath the blockage, and that's where we have our pain. So when someone has a headache, when they get headaches, it's because that energy that's coming out of the crown can't get into the rootedness, so it backs up into the head. So what was happening with me was I wasn't awake in my rootedness. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know. I was trying to be a good daughter, trying to be a good, sister, trying to be a good citizen, be a good partner, be a good doctor, on and on and on. And that's a lot of trying, and it's very exhausting, and it uproots us. It's, we never really accomplish being those things. We can act like those things and contribute, but we never get to feel our goodness when we're trying to be good. We're not actually allowing ourselves to already be that. We have to step outside of our goodness in order to try to be a good person. And so, we're just backwards, and there's reasons for that. But to answer your question, there's a rootedness, a knowingness of self that isn't fully embodied. And so this energy can't get in here. It can't vibrate its way back in. It's too high of a frequency, can't resonate here because I'm shut down in my rootedness. And so I have a dense vibration happening there. So this energy backlogs into the head, and boom, boy, does it.
In terms of all of these conversations around energy and all of the places that we can tap into and work with, how does remote healing work? I understand people laying hands and things like that, but what are you accessing if you're healing someone remotely?
Yeah, beautiful. So I just taught a course last weekend on remote healing with people around the world, plugging in, and the experiences that we have when we start working with this are just undeniable. It's just so beautiful. So when you think about the unified field, it is the backdrop that is so refined, the energy is so fine that it's the backdrop of everything. Okay, it's everything exists. There is a frequency in you that's identical to the frequency in me. The higher and higher vibrations that we start to work with. Here's something that might be helpful. Okay, here we are physically, and then this is purple line is where chakras exist, and then this one is the blue one is the emotional feeling body. And this is our mental body. And this is spiritual, different layers of our spiritual body. Chakra 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 represented here, 12 being the highest vibration. This one goes on forever. Okay, that's the sheet that I was talking about. Okay, so this goes all the way to you. And your 12 becomes your 11 and your 10 and your 9 and your 8, all the way into your physical form. And so if I can vibrate right here, if I can bring my consciousness and dial it in to the subtle, loving presence of, think of it as like God, divine source, like what would it be if I could just allow myself to be soaking in the heavens? What if I didn't have to earn my way into the heavens, but what if I was made of it? And what if there was a version of me that I could dial down into to the subtlety that is the energy that I share with you? And if I could do that, and we can, by all means, we can do this. We're built for this. We're built of this. And so when we drop the mind enough and we drop into this essence, we start to raise our vibration, and it just starts to come here. And as such, it's the same as you. So if there is disturbance in your system based on your story or your, whatever you're caught up in your life, and there's a distortion in your field, if I stream this source energy and dial into that frequency and bring you into my consciousness at the same time, and can maintain this presence, which this greater love that I was referencing is how we do that. It's so magnetizing, this greater love, that it keeps us in that state, even though I'm bringing you into my consciousness at the same time. And then as I'm streaming this source energy, this template of unconditionality, that the highest good be done for you, it allows your field to be served by something more unconditional than it perhaps has been exposed to, which allows you to disentangle from the issues that you've been carrying in your field, which keep you in the distortions that keep you sick, physically, mentally, emotionally, what have you. So it allows for a perfecting template to be present for you in mass, because there are at least two of us, you and me, focusing on your well-being, your healing. And so when that happens, we get it from the inside and we get it from the outside. We sort of have these dissonant energies surrounded. And as a byproduct, your field starts to vibrate in a fashion that is closer and closer and closer to that perfecting template. It's sort of like we just get a cog out of the wheel for you, and then your system can start self-healing again. It just got locked down on a pattern that just needs a little help. But if no one's walking around bringing attention to these vibrational frequency versions of themselves, then they never get to be amplified. They're just sitting there dormant. Nobody's using them. And that's why humanity is scampering around like we need help. But the help is right here. It's just that we've never turned it on and embodied it and integrated it and utilized it because of our belief systems that are geared toward, you got to take a pill or get an injection or have something surgically removed, or, the various things that we've just been habitually stuck in as our solutions. And, fortunately, people are waking up.
What is your message regarding love? Because it sort of runs through so many aspects of the energy work, and it's such a deep and meaningful, larger concept to embrace. What would you like to leave us with regarding the application, right, of love as a mechanism for accessing these deeper levels of ourselves and healing?
Beautiful question. So I just wrote a book that was originally going to be called Awakening Through a Greater Love. And we decided to bring anatomy and structure into it. So it's called The Anatomy of Awakening, that's coming out spring of 26. And so I think it plays a huge role. I wrote a whole book about it. And it's our true nature. And it is not something we have to go and get. The fact that we think we have to get love and receive love is what has us locked in this world of duality and insufficiency and not healing and anxiety and all the things that break down into the disease patterns and conditions that we've been speaking about today. And so I think that it is as big as we can get. And I know that love is in the body. Embodied love is different than negotiable love or romantic love and bargaining love. And so what I'm teaching people to do is to receive this energy that's pouring into this toric field system that is you. It's love. That's what it is. It's this divine continuum, the through line of the series of compressions that bring us to this physical dimension. If I could give it a quality, it's divine love. It's love. And so what I would have people do is start being the love, feeling it in your body before you try to bring love to situations. And we know that love heals in relationships and communication issues. We know that love heals the physical body. We know that that love plays a role in our ability to manifest and so on, because it's the highest vibration we can be vibrating at and still be in the physical form at all. So it's very high frequency. It's very comprehensive, if you will. But what I encourage people to do is imagine the love that you would love the world to know. Imagine the love that you long for, that love that you've been bargaining for and mad at your partner because they don't deliver it, or that love that your parents couldn't show, or whatever. Let's get responsible about that. Like, what is that love? What's it feel like? If you could not even describe it, but if you could feel it, what would it feel like? And to practice feeling that in your body every day, as many times a day as you can remember to do it. And, carve out 5 minutes before you get out of bed to just practice it. And then, when you start practicing this greater love, it becomes like first nature, because it is your first nature, and it becomes readily accessible in an instant. All you have to do is put your attention, boom, right there you are. And it may take you a while to develop that relationship with your mind, because your mind has been, it's been rogue. It's been feral, and you're bringing it back home through this love, and bring your mind onto your body and feel this love. And what happens is you change on a cellular level. Your mind starts to be magnetized back onto the self instead of operating out there on its own. And now it's here to magnify the true self, the true loving self. And we heal when we start to do this, and anchoring yourself in the body. There are ways to learn to do that are so easy to do, but we've just never put the pieces together in this way with love as a priority. Love has been marginalized as a value. We think you're not smart. If you're too loving, you're going to get walked on, doormat. And it's not that at all. It's not that at all. It's quite the opposite, in fact.
Well, thank you so much. Where can people find out more about you, and especially the new book?
Oh, well, great. I'm pretty easy to find. Dr. Sue Morter, MORTER.com. And, I have YouTube channel and have all those things that you can find. It's DRSUEMORTER.com is the website that'll give you a navigation through all sorts of coursework. If you're a practitioner, teaching you how to be a better practitioner with energy medicine. There's a school of higher consciousness. There's a school of body awake yoga, where we're anchoring this consciousness in the core of the body and building the circuits in rapid fire to truly be able to sustain the bigness of our being. And the new book is coming out March of 26, which is just around the corner. And there'll be all sorts of information coming out about that. If you plug in and you want us to let you know when that is, just let us know. Sign up. There's a meditation that you can have, of course, just to give you a felt sense of what I'm talking about. And yeah, that's it. We're here for you in all ways.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And yeah, really appreciated your time, and we will take that love with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's been a joy to be with you guys. A wonderful conversation, and thank you for what you're doing for humanity. Yeah.
Here's what I'm going to say. There's a lot of things I don't understand about what Dr. Sue Morter was saying, but I'm going to focus on the things that I do understand. And there were a lot of similarities in the conversation about meditation with a lot of people that we've spoken about, in terms of not necessarily vibrational frequencies, right? But brainwave states. And this is something that we know is measurable. And I don't mean like it's measurable, like I can prove it, I need to prove it. I mean, we can gain information about what's going on at an electrical level from the scalp/brain, right? When we're saying, oh, these are these kind of waves, these are alpha waves, these are beta waves, these are theta waves, right? And I do love this idea, which I think kind of incorporates some of the more, spiritual stuff that she was talking about. This notion that we all come from a blank slate. We all come from something beautiful. And when you think about the challenges that some of us are born into, or the culture that many of us are born into, or the class that we're born into, right? Whatever the circumstances, the political circumstances, if you grow up where there's strife, right? The you that originated when, sperm meets egg, right? That you is pure. It is love. It is the purest representation of the person that you then become. So when I think about brainwave states, where are those? Those are at that special place that allows you to get in touch with that. And when you're in a deep meditative state, and when you're doing especially the kind of meditation that she's talking about, which is like chanting and its movement and its breath, it's almost like holotropic breath work. Like you're forcing the brain to go into a different state. That's what I can understand about this place that she's saying we can all access.
Yes, and in that place, we can talk about the different type of thinking that is available to us.
Correct.
We talk a lot on the pod about the nature of reactivity, how
Yes.
we're showing up in any given moment, and so much of our past is coloring how we're perceiving the present.
Our notion that when we're in a reactive state that you should actually make any decisions from that place, right? Like who has tried to yell at someone when they're agitated, right? It doesn't work. It's like it's the equivalent of reading the label on the bottle from inside the bottle, right? I do like that saying. That notion of where is the place where calm thinking comes from? Where is the place that considering the other person's perspective comes from? Where is the place where you say, gosh, hurt people hurt? That's not the same place as when someone pulls in front of you on the freeway and you start screaming it. That's not your higher self. So if you're going to talk about your higher self, either from a literal place where clearly Dr. Sue Morter, is speaking from, but I'm saying even from a conceptual place, like what would a higher version of me do in this situation? How would the best version of me react?
And having the opinion or the feeling, it's really a thought that creates a feeling that the universe is there to help us in some way.
Yeah, like feeling supported, feeling like someone, is on your side. Here's the thing, and I know we'll get into this on the Substack Live that we do when we release this episode. I want to know all of the things that you resonated with from your time working with energy. Because when she started talking about, feeling energy from your hands, that's a lot of, right? What Reiki is, it's learning to focus that energy, right? I wonder how much of that resonated with your experience.
I have a list, actually. I have an astonishing story that you're not going to believe about the time that I spent living at the ashram, where I invited a friend and what happened to them during a meditation, because at the ashram you have a twice a day half-hour meditation, and I brought a friend to group meditation. So I'll tell that story on Substack. But the first thing that, and I'm going to talk about the energetics in a second, the first thing that just was a similarity between the diagram that she showed, and if you were listening and you didn't see the diagram, what she showed is the circles of energy that are, that happen, right?
Do you mean the torus field?
The torus, what was it?
So the torus field is like if you're in the middle of a bagel. Like a bagel's around you.
Two bagels. So there's a bagel on either side. It's like an overlapping bagel.
Well, the actual shape is a bagel, and then there's these two rotations within the bagel, yes.
Okay, so
some people would say donut, but I went bagel.
So the thing that she shows are these like basically blockages
so
to
it's actually,
the vibratory.
it goes all the way around though.
Yeah, exactly. So when I heard that, I'm like, oh, that is what Michael Singer talks about. Garbage. He's like, we're filled with garbage.
You're talking about is that
painful experiences.
We carry painful experiences, what other people would call baggage, the stories we tell, and he wants us to associate that with it's things that actually are not useful and need to be discarded.
Correct.
As opposed to we're all full of garbage.
Yes, that's exactly right. And where she takes it one step further is that she's saying it is impacting the flow of energy that keeps you alive, the source of energy. And, there is this merger between physicists energy people and the medical community that's trying to better understand how do cells function, what is it that animates us and gives us the energy? Why do some people heal and have these miraculous outcomes while other people are constantly struggling? And what is the interplay between our mind and our ability for the rest of us to function? So when you ask me, you're smiling and you're like...
I mean, I'm smiling because we also didn't get to spend enough time. It was just at the end of our time with her when she casually was like, oh, and cells can function differently. And I remembered Bruce Lipton.
Bruce Lipton.
And Greg Braden talked about this.
Bernardo Castro. He talked about Michael Levine, his work with cancer cells and how changing the bioenergetics of around the cancer cell change the functioning of the cell itself.
Okay, and this is one of the things that I just want us to be, sort of careful about. There is a lot of overlap with what she is talking about and with some of these things. But also there is a different kind of definition of consciousness that is used in energy circles versus the kind of consciousness conversations that we're having in other circles. So I think we need to be careful. And I think that's some of my...
You love being careful, and I appreciate that about you. I'm gonna tie this to what you asked me about the similarity.
Tie it like a bagel.
Okay. To the energy work. When someone is receiving hands-on work, you can feel where the blockage is.
Yeah, when she said that there's like a density, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, there's a density. It's like when you're using a stud finder in a wall, and it's like, not stud, not stud, not beep, 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 beep. That's kind of what it feels like. It feels like the pulse of energy shifts. It becomes either colder or warmer, potentially. It becomes more magnetic, whereby the hand is almost pulled into the body or pushed away. But it is a substantial change in what is otherwise experienced.
This is a thing I have never experienced. So it's very hard. Well, like, Valerie, have you ever experienced this?
I'm going to...
No. Like, not everybody... What I mean is, I'm not saying it's not true.
No, you have experienced it. I'm going to remind you.
No, I have not. I've never...
So on Substack, we told the story when you received Reiki. You were actually...
No.
Hold on. We were on your couch. You weren't feeling well. You were like, hey, come on, you should... You requested a Reiki session. I was working on you. I think it was actually when you had your tonsils out.
Oh, yeah.
And you were really struggling with your tonsillitis.
I was very struggling, yes.
And...
You made me feel nauseous.
I did. However, I mean, I don't think I was doing anything specific, but what happened was that I was drawn to your solar plexus, and I put a hand on your solar plexus, and you felt
nauseous.
Not at first, but you started breathing into your solar plexus.
Yeah. And
what I felt was this blockage and stuck part of your solar plexus.
I didn't, but here's what I'm saying. That that wasn't me experiencing what it's like to step into someone else's energy field and be like, oh, that shifted.
No, it was a first-hand experience of what a blockage might feel like. I did not feel nauseous. But as we were moving that thing, so in my experience, that was something that was stuck there that you were working on that brought up nauseousness.
This is important. And this was something that
nausea.
Nausea, yeah. This is something that she said. And what she said is like, for us, and what she said is that, like, we feel things in our body, and if we're not trained, we don't know what to make of them, essentially. So many of us, like, what was the first thing I said? Like, I'm like, I feel yucky and I don't want to do this, and stop and move your hand away from me.
Okay. And
I was supposed to lean into it and I have an experience? I don't know.
So in the times that I've done a lot of hands-on work and workshops in other places and working with individuals, when that happens, on the flip side of that is some sort of cathartic release.
Then why did you let me pull away? You didn't want me to have the release.
Well, there's something about not doing it with someone who you were like casually, hey, I just want to have a treatment, versus you're going to someone and you're like prepping for that and you're like ready for the emotional process that may come from that.
But what did you think would happen? I was like really struggling. You thought that you'd touch me and I'd just be like, this is fun. You knew I was going to have a breakdown.
I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought maybe it would help you calm down a little bit and not do a deep emotional
and
process.
Instead, it made it worse.
You're just a deep emotional processor.
Oh.
However, without the right container support, you
Yes.
could potentially try and attack the person who is making and helping you bring that thing up. There's a lot of like, when someone is, and this isn't the same as drowning, but when you're drowning, you just grab the person who may be swimming
Yeah.
next to you,
And
and
pull
then you
them
both go down. So there needs to be a little
Just
bit of
our
a
relationship.
just humans interacting, right?
Just everyone interacting with other people. People think we're delightful, by the way. When we do Substack Lives, people love our banter. One person was afraid that I was teasing you. I'm sometimes playful with you, and especially with this kind of thing. I could tell that you understood things that she was saying in a way that I don't have a framework for that. But I would never tease you about it.
One of the things we do on Substack is sometimes we get a little bit more into the energetics. I've been sharing more these days about my past experience. And
Yes.
while you know me and you spend quite a bit of time with me, you still make the face like I'm talking a foreign language to you that you don't quite understand, which is fun.
I'm emoting for a lot of people out there.
You are representing those people, but who may not have had the experience. But a lot of the Substack community actually, we get a lot of comments like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about," and you read those comments because you're great at scanning comments, and you say, "What? How is that possible?"
One of the things before we say goodbye that I do want to mention about the energy codes, it is a very cool book, and she goes through every single chakra. She goes through every single one.
How come you say that word so funny?
What is it? Chakra?
How do you say it?
Chakra?
Chakra.
Chakra?
Chuck.
How do you say it?
Shock.
Chakra.
Yeah.
She goes through every single chakra and gives you exercises, breathing, and ways to learn some of the very, very sophisticated ancient techniques that that yogis have used for thousands of years. She teaches you which part of your body to sort of squeeze to constrict energy and how to release it, and the poses. I wish we could have talked to her more about this, but she goes through for every chakra level the poses and breath work that focuses on that region. It's very interesting. And it starts with Cobra pose. Sorry, just kidding.
I don't know what Cobra pose is, but
It's right here.
I think there's a lot of ways to start to access this. And another thing that I understood, and again, I think the language is difficult because it can mean a lot of different things to different people. She talks about like vibrational frequency and, creating a system in your body to hold a different vibration, right? And so if you're used to stories and patterns and ways of thinking about yourself that have an enormous amount of doubt and self-criticism, what she's saying is our thoughts vibrate in our bodies, and then our bodies are representations of the larger system that we are creating. I believe that to be true. And as you start to have more compassion for oneself, more optimism, we tend to take better care of ourselves. And so we end up, and this is where it gets a little bit, I think, messy in terms of terminology, we end up having the capacity to sort of live better lives because we're more uplifting. If we're doing a lot of drugs and alcohol, that is a suppressing force that creates, not a very expansive vibration. Is that, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's accurate.
So in many ways, when people sometimes have these breakthrough transcendental experiences, awakenings of some kind, what they're doing then is bringing that information back and trying to integrate it. If you've ever gone to a retreat, whether that be a meditation retreat or you just had a lot of calm and peace in your life, and then you come back to the stresses in your world, you're starting to be like, well, how do I take the knowledge that something can exist that is not my current experience, and how do I integrate that way of being?
Well, and I think also the one thing that I did appreciate when she talked about frequencies in a way that I could understand, what is it like to leave space between things, right? And at these frequencies that are, anxious frequencies, right? There's not space. And that made sense to me, right? There is no, with the exception of kind of Breath of Fire and some of the more interesting Kundalini, breath that we do that's very activating. Meditation is based on lowering the activation in the system, right? Creating more space between, okay, you want to say wavelengths, fine. More space between breaths, between thoughts, right? Those are the places where that happens. And the work of Richard Davidson, who we had on, a couple of
2
years
years
ago. He literally, he's the guy who would scan the brains of the chanting monks and say, like, what is going on in their brains. There is a scientific qualification and quantification of what that looks like and what it feels like.
There are two states most people fall into: too much brain activity. They're revving too high.
I don't know. It wasn't like too much brain activity.
No, but they're in I forget the states. They're
yeah. It would be
when you scan it, it's red.
Great. So it's a type of brain activity of a quality that we would say is too much, as it's agitating and
And doesn't leave room for that creative.
You want exactly the brain activity you have.
The words that she uses is creative, innovator, and what we know is that in a slower brainwave state, more creative solutions are available.
Oh, yeah.
More, like, you can think outside the box. You can look at it from a different angle.
Martha Beck talks about
Susan
this.
David talked about it?
Susan David talked about this, but Martha Beck talked about that for sure, that it's only in that state, in that creative state, right, that we have that kind of opening. And that is the kind of brainwave state that we're seeing from certain transcendental and even psychedelic experiences.
Some people, and I think this is a far smaller group, need that breath of fire and awakening because their systems are actually slow. They're struggling to pick up and to energize. But I think that's really a much smaller group of people. That is the sound of the breath of fire. And even sometimes those people who still need to slow down, the goal is they might still use the breath of fire because the goal is not only to slow down, but is to be able to switch through the states at the times that you need to, right? You want to be able to move quickly, but you don't want to have to make decisions in that space if you're feeling pressured to react instead of finding a novel solution.
One thing that didn't get spoken about, and I know it's in here, I know it's in her book, vagus nerve. This kind of breathing is getting your vagus nerve online so that your vagus nerve can do the things that it's supposed to do in calming your system down. And the vagus nerve innervates, it's not just about your breath, it's innervating your organs. So when people have autoimmune conditions and when there's vagus nerve disruption, what do they usually report? Usually like heart problems, right? Tachycardia, anxiety attacks. I think I'm having a panic attack. Messed up stomach, right? Either constipated or diarrhea, right? Like all these things that are happening. The meditative state is tapping into the part of your brain that says, if they're breathing like this, they are not running from anything. If they're breathing like this, there is no need to be fighting or fleeing or freezing or fawning. This is the state of safety.
And we want to be able to go to that space consciously, right? Not just find ourselves there. Knowing how to operate between those states is kind of the key to
I'm going to do it right
well-being.
now. I'm going to do it right now. Okay, I feel better. But that's what like she said, you just drop in.
In the interview, she talked about accessing love. And you've led the Breaker community on Substack through love and kindness meditation. You have talked about your own practice there. When you get used to it, like right now, I can put my hands on my heart and just bring forward that feeling. Like once you know where it is, you can access it and you can go back to it.
Yes, and for many people, they have to learn.
Finding that frequency, as she talks about.
Well, even just focusing on one part of your body. For some people, it's like the aphantasia conversation. Like when you talk to someone who can't picture an apple, what we're asking people to do, for some people, they can't do it.
The people who have that, they can use their mind to feel in a part of their body, though. Like you can take your hands and you can say, okay, what do my solar plexus feel like? Let's breathe into that. Let's breathe into my heart. Let's breathe into my throat.
It's hard. It's hard for a lot of people. Alyssa commented sometimes, like when you're told, like, feel it in your body. A lot of people are like, what what does that actually mean? I mean, it took me a very long time to understand, breath. I had this wonderful yoga teacher when I was an undergrad at UCLA. No one was like, nobody had heard of yoga. And I was like, what is this class? I'm going to take this class. This was, the early 90s. And she taught me what it was to breathe into my belly. And I was like, what? There's different ways to breathe? I mean, I had to be taught as like a grown-up,
What are we really learning in school?
Excuse me?
I mean, these are fundamental.
How to pronounce applicable.
I never learned that. And that is something that you point out.
Sometimes we learn how to form sentences.
I think it's applicable. You don't think it's applicable. You think it's applicable.
You also think it's comparable and it's comparable.
I don't. You know what? It is that. But I did not in school, but I learned later. I mean, I think fundamentally, if we're not being taught how to
even
operate
where your body is,
this physical form that is in charge of how we think.
They're starting to teach kids, I think it's in the Bay Area. Everything happens in the Bay Area like this. They were teaching mindfulness to kids. Like, I mean, I've tried to do it with my it's and on that note, no, but meaning even to try and introduce that conversation. This is one of the places that I'm glad that the world has changed in this way. Yeah. And social media is part of it. When we started this podcast, there wasn't as much conversation. And I'm not saying because of us, I'm saying things have shifted so much. When we started this podcast, we were kind of explaining to each other what we're trying to articulate. And now you can go on social media and there's all this conversation about breath and centering and grounding. We're finally seeing that it's more part of a collective conversation.
More people are learning it for sure. Speaking of Richard Davidson that you brought up,
yes,
I think we're going to offer people a special treat. We know we have a lot of new listeners, and we're so grateful that you're here.
Is it a bagel?
We're going to revisit just the beginning. It's about 2 minutes of Richard talking about how we form stories and how those stories shape our entire lives.
It's a great reminder as we have this conversation with Dr. Sue to see all of the places where there are connection points for opening, for space, and ultimately for letting love in.
Stick around for this section with Richard, and if you want to check out that episode, it's in the back catalog on audio and on YouTube. If you want more of this conversation, including a story about the ashram and energy and how to not be afraid, and I'm going to ask Mayim about her relationship to connecting with her higher self, join us on Substack for the live.
In addition, we're going to focus over on Substack on one of the chakras, and I'm going to talk Jonathan through the exercises that you would do to get in touch with that system. So head on over to Substack to see which chakra system Jonathan chooses.
And now, Richard Davidson.
Our beliefs and our expectations, particularly our beliefs about ourselves and our expectations of ourselves, influence our perception of the world. Mm. And I would go even further to say they not only influence our perception of the world, they define the world in which we subjectively inhabit. One way for an average person to reflect about this, and this is a kind of simple meditation exercise that we do, is imagine a challenging situation that has happened recently in your life. Bring it into your mind and simply envision what your response to that situation might be if you had a completely different set of beliefs and expectations going into that situation. We are so fused with the beliefs and expectations that we have of ourselves. Many people don't even recognize that they have beliefs and expectations.
Wait, can we slow this down just for a second? Because so I thought of a situation, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I thought of a situation where someone hurt my feelings and they did something that I think is wrong, unethical, really wrong. So I'm trying to imagine, I'm thinking of a friend of mine who happens to be I would consider a pretty enlightened person. She was raised in a Buddhist community and she's very chill. if this happened to her, she would have had a totally different reaction. I mean, it's not to say that she wouldn't be hurt, but is that the kind of example we're talking about?
Yeah, I think that's a very appropriate example.
Huh.
We all have a narrative about ourselves. Many people don't recognize that they have a narrative. And there are some people that recognize that they have a narrative, but they regard it as a kind of fixed quality of themselves. They don't recognize that the narrative can shift. And really what's key to well-being is not so much changing the narrative at the beginning, but it's changing our relationship to the narrative so that we can see the narrative for what it is, that it is a narrative. And it could be different. It's a constellation of thoughts. And thoughts are thoughts. They're ephemeral. They come and go.
And from our breakdown to the one we hope you never have, we'll see you next time.
It's Mayim Bialik's breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you. She's got a neuroscience PhD or two. One fiction, and now she's going